Okay, everybody, so I'm back here with more development on the game here. So I'm going to go ahead and get it booted up to show where we're currently at before I continue doing anything. So we still got all our same GUI components. What I've done, if you notice in the console down there, is I finally started working on the code to detect what button we're over top of. So if I move my cursor here, it says we're over top of the right arrow. It'll then say we're over top of a button B3, button B2, B1, and B0, and then of course you got your left arrow. It works perfectly. It'll detect the container. Like, see if I'm right here on the edge, it detects the ability grid container, and as soon as I go over top of a button, it detects the button. This code works really, really well. Really simplistic code. It handles resizing. Actually, I need to adjust it here so you guys can see the console still. So it handles resizing perfectly well because, after all, everything in the... Let me rephrase this and go back. The positioning data that it uses to check for is based on the camera. The camera is actually the bounds of everything here. As I've noted before, I've set the camera up to increase and decrease in size as resolution changes, rather than doing what some games do and actually scale the camera and everything inside of it. This works out much better as it allows it to change size like this and etc, etc. Of course, we still have the bug that if we get down too small, it shears everything off. I'll fix that later. But the buttons work. It detects everything. There's no clicking actions yet. If you haven't noticed already, there is an FPS and UPS meter in here, and they do update. It's not a perfect meter. What it does is it takes the last ticks, or the last seconds, FPS and UPS, records that, and then displays it. So it's only going to tell you what the last second's frame rate was. It's not going to give you an average. A lot of games will give you an average over multiple seconds. That way you know if you're going up and down. This one just tells you literally where you're at right now. It's nothing really fancy. I will probably work on it, and it does need more work. As you can see, the cursor is rendering over top of it. A lot of little small things to work on. What I'm going to be working on here now is I'm going to get the buttons clickable. So we're going to do clicking actions with these, and I'm going to get some more render data on here. So we've got text rendering, we can render stuff. So what I'm trying to work on, I just did display name data here. What I want to do is when I'm hovering over an entity, I want to see what that entity's name is. That way I can identify who he is and easily tell what's going on, because a lot of entities can start to look the same. Most players will probably change the outfits on their characters to distinguish better. I know when I play XCOM 2, I'll try to give, I wouldn't say each one of my characters unique visual, but I'll give each class of character unique visual. Like usually my snipers are wearing white armor, my attack guys are wearing red armor, my heavies are wearing blue armor, my medics usually green or something. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. But we're going to play around with this and figure out exactly what we're doing here. So I think the issue I'm having with this is this setting right here. So actually I'm casting, no, that should, why is that complaining saying casting the int doesn't matter? Because what we're doing is we want this value and we want to check here. And it's like, hey, the cast isn't necessary because... I know exactly what's wrong. Here we go. This should fix it. There we go. So entity characters, entity character, entity character, entity character. So I'm returning the wrong value, but we can see it is working. So when we hover over top of it, it'll tell us what we're doing, or who our character is rather. So let's go find our character object here, and I got the display name here. Display name equals name, and we're calling getDisplayName, which is overriding the super getDisplayName. Did I? Oh wait, here I'm calling the wrong code. That's the reason why this isn't working. Here we go. So we got Tem. This is also returning Tem for some reason. Although the T is completely cut off. There's Paul, there's Bob. Oh, I guess this is Jim and that's Tim. Yeah, who are our characters actually? Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, I did call one Jim. Let's call one Joe. That way we don't have text that's similar to each other to cause confusion. And let's see if we can fix why the selection bound is rendering over top of our text. Because our text should be the lasting rendering, so it should actually render over everything. Okay, it has to do with how our font render is designed in the first place. So we get game GUI layer, and then we got selection layer. Selection layer should render underneath. If we go up to the top, selection layer is 0.4, game GUI layer is 0.7. It's actually really high. So these two shouldn't ever overlap with each other. So what happened? Fonts even increased even further. Let's actually take this up like 0.5. No, actually, that would 0.1, I guess. We'll sit here and toy with this real quick. Okay, yeah, that fixed it. I guess it doesn't like partial values. There we go. So we got that rendering. So it does know who we're hovering on top of. We do need to fix the text width here. So let's go ahead and start working on that. When we get that done, then we're working on button clicking. So let's go to our font render object. We really want to turn our font render object into a GUI display object eventually. Not because everything's going to use that GUI display object, but because if we're going to be rendering text on a GUI component, the text needs to be part of the component, not part of something else. So we don't want to be using a separate data object for text. The only exception would be if we're rendering names above characters and stuff. It's best to just render those with the character. It's nothing fancy there. So we're going to be messing with fonts. So we want to go to graphics, render, font render. I need to rename that one right there. So let's see. So we need to re-enable our buffer reader. And our buffer reader keeps track of information about the character. But what we're reading in okay, so so let's go open the file because we need to look at what the file formatting looks like, and then we have to then reverse engineer it. So tabletop game, resources, textures, GUI, fonts. And let's go ahead and let's move our font up a package. I'm going to cut this right here, and then we'll put this here. That way it's not in the GUI, because the fonts are not necessarily just related to GUI, although they technically are part of the HUD. So I want to move them up a package, and then we have to go to the game display real quick and change this to texture path. There we go. And I'm probably going to simplify this font render object here, where we just know where the font folder is and we just name the font, so it'll be like Times New Roman, something like that. Right now we're not going to have multiple fonts, but eventually we will have multiple fonts. Because you'll have, say for example, you have your main GUI font, but then you may have a bolded military style font for documents, so that way if you find a document, it matches what it would look like in real life. You may have alien character fonts where we make up a language just so we can display something, which would be squibbles pretty much. That's especially going to be the case in a couple of these campaigns because we do have several races of aliens. Let me actually delete this line. We don't need that anymore. So yeah, there's, I think 15 races, I think is what we have. Most of them aren't going to have languages. Let me phrase this. Only half of them will have a language that we could use. There's a few races that would only communicate verbally. there's going to be races that don't even communicate, period. They just kind of coexist with each other. I guess it would be a form of communication. Like the plant race is going to probably be neurological communication, like, I might use chemical. I'll figure that out later. I'm a little bit slow in my brain here because I've been awake most of the day and it's 10 o'clock right now. I've went through 2 class lectures, several matches of Arma, and tons of other things that have eaten away my brain power for today, but we're going to try to get this knocked out. That way I have more to work with. So what I need to do is I need to go to charm maps, contains key, and we want to store the key here somewhere. And actually we don't need a map anymore, so we're going to get rid of this. We're going to just store it in an array. We already do. I'm storing it in an array already. So we just need to put a byte here. Now we're going to call it just policy. That's literally the easiest way to do this. So then we're going to go font data. Yeah, so we'll go font data C. And then we'll put C down here as well. Actually, I'm going to do this. I believe we could set this to -1. Will that work? Okay. Doesn't equal null. C is greater than 0. C doesn't equal null. Go down here if C is greater than 0. Then we want to go. Actually, we need to do 2 things here. So we need to do an else statement. So we'll put this here. Like I said, so we need to check if C actually loaded, which we can do like this, because we don't need to do that per se. We then want to check to see if we already have a pre-existing thing, because if I open up this, which I was heading for the first place, and I realized I lost track, this does not read in data. So each line is not just one piece of the data. There is the first set, which is our width, which is the only thing we really want to read in. But then you have offset data. Yeah, you have width and offset data basically is what we have. So we have X and Y offset data, we have width offset data, and then we have actual width of the characters. We then have other stuff that comes in here. So this actually tells us about everything we want to know about the font. It tells us the width of the image, the height of the image, the cell size. Cell size could be important because we could actually just load this font in, which you know what, we're gonna actually capture this data here in a second because this is important data. Because if I go up to here, we actually require we don't require this data, but the texture sheet down here, there's the size, there's our cell size. If we can load this information in, this will save us a bit of work, because then if I go in and change this, or even somebody else comes in and changes our default text sizes, this code will function properly. And even better, we do a lot of expected width data here. This will fix itself. Well, actually, I'm more for this. We wouldn't need this anymore. I'm still going to include it because of the fact that if somebody just wants to change the texture size or resolution but doesn't want to change this data, then it'll work out fine. I'm going to move that to the side, and we're going to start working on tearing it down. So we know the first few lines are actually data we're going to use for other things. We don't need the texture file anymore. That's not actually part of this file. Now we could make it part of the file, but it would have to be manually added. Actually, that's really useful if we could just add this real quick. You know what? Image name, and then we could go, what is it called? We actually don't need these two files anymore. Actually, what is this file? Let me edit with a notepad. Okay, that is clearly text or data of some kind. So if you go image.name, we're going to get rid of these two because I don't need those. So we get image.name, and our image is literally, we're going to rename this file real quick. So the name of our text is this real quick. So we're going to go like this, and we're going to go like that, and we're going to rename it. Actually, we're going to rename it again, and I'm going to put some dots between things. So we'll assume if we ever wanted to display what the text is we've got loaded, we'll assume dots or spaces. That's going to backfire on us, but I don't care. So we know this is what it is, and we'll call it PNG. So we know that's where our file is. So we can load this in. That way, we just have to provide this data. So we're going to copy this real quick. So we got a texture file, and texture file equals there is a way to load this stuff in. Because when you go to load this information, this would be your property. So this would be what this property is called. And this would be your data. At least that's in theory what this is. Because if we load this into a spreadsheet, this would actually all load into a spreadsheet if I actually call it. Because Minecraft uses, or not Minecraft, MCPC uses CSV files for a lot of things, and I've seen them open in spreadsheets. But then our first file is, so actually let's do the, I think every line contains a comma, so we're going to do it that way. So we're going to go string split equals buffer dot split, and we want to split by a comma. And then we want to go string prop equals split dot 0, and then string dot value equals split dot 1. That'll save us because if we ever have to split, and then what we can do is go right here. If prop dot starts with image, which these do start with image, then we can do down here if prop dot contains name, then that's our texture name, or that's our texture. Yeah, that'll work. Or actually, we're gonna change that to file. So this is called file. So then our texture file would just be pretty much value. We don't have to change it. So we're gonna call. Yeah, we can do this real quick. Data dot substring dot data dot last entry of slash. That should work. So if we go 0 from there, that'll give us our file path. And we would do +1, I think, on this one. That should, in theory, work. So then we want to go. So we want to go int image width, int image height, and then we would go int cell width, int cell height, and then we would go int. Actually, we don't care about the starting char. We'll read it anyway, so we'll go start char. What other data do we have? So we got string font name. Then we got int font height, and then int font width, Okay, font width default is what this will be actually called, because not to be confused. And that's all of our global data. And then all we gotta do is to start reading it in. So well, we need to make another property here. So this will be, I might make a system for reading these in, by the way. There's probably a library out there for it, but I don't care. So this will be font. So we get font is one of ours. Then we've got cell, which should be the cell width. We've already got image. We've then got char. I'm actually going to go burn through the thing real quick. There are a couple more values. Some of these I'm not going to even bother to read in. But we have a global thing. So there is, so the int font global width offset int font global x offset int font global y offset. We're going to cache all this stuff up here. So we're going to actually do this real quick. Font data. That way I understand what the hell this stuff is. Data read in from .csv file. And of course, this stuff would all be private. Actually, no, we just do public final real quick. So this is all unmodifiable data. So once it loads, and you don't have to worry about it. And we don't need to store the file name. If we scroll back up real quick, we can start breaking this stuff down. So if we go if prop.contains the sandwich I ate earlier is fighting back. Let's see. So we go font, height. You know, we're gonna remove this real quick. Because I need this stuff to be guaranteedly cached, and then we're just gonna do throws exception, and then we won't have to worry about it. By the way, that's a really bad idea to do what I just did, but I don't care. That's a good way to put it. So we got our value. So it'll be font height integer dot parse. Why is this complaining? We gotta do this real quick. Replace all. Control Z space. Replace all. There we go. So that will, because we're setting this data in a loop, it's going to complain. I completely neglected that that is a thing Java does. Because the idea behind preventing you from doing it is the fact that what if the loop doesn't execute? Then you have no way of guaranteeing it happened. So let's see. So we've got, this is actually supposed to be with font. Oh yeah, it is with default. So then we would go down to, no, that's actually not right. Oh, I derped. This is image width. I'm reading the wrong line in the document, which is what just happened there. So we're going to do, copy this. We're going to drag this down here. Yeah, that'll work. So this just needs to be cell height and then cell width. Okay, we'll do globals later because it's not important. A really cool thing is we can do, oh yeah, texture files null. Texture file. You know what we will default the texture file to? It'll be the name. So it'd be font name. So if we go all the way to the bottom, so if texture does not equal null, we use texture file. If it does equal null, and then additionally what we're going to do is we're going to copy this, because then I can, yeah, we'll remove this, because then I can bring this all the way down here, put this in front of here, and it saves me a little bit of work. But then we can do font name plus .png. And then we just got to set the texture font to null to start with, and this data will run itself. And then we got to do image width, image height, we want cell width, and cell height. There we go. Okay, data equals font dot c. That'll work that out real quick. We need to move this up here because we don't want to be restoring it after everything. There's no point. This only needs to be put here. Okay, so we want to redo this stuff here. We're actually just going to delete this here. We don't need this. We just need to do that. That's actually not going to work. So character font data, we're going to put it by here. Because all of our character stuff transitions to a byte. The reality of it is we don't really need to store that value there because it's implied that it is used. But we're going to do it anyways just for sanity reasons. Apparently this is always going to be null. The data will figure out how this works here soon. So we're going to go else if char is what this is. So if this starts with a char, we're then going to read in it could split by space, but that's not going to work. We want to grab the second instance of okay. So string num equals buffer.substring. So char is 0, 1, 2, 3, so this would be 4. Actually, if you know the space is always going to be there, it's going to be 5. And then we want to go buffer.length. And then we want to go num equals num dot substring. 0 value buffer dot index of. We need a space value. That's probably not going to work. Unless, can I do it this way? I think that might work. We're going to test it. If it does do the trick we want, then we're going to be pretty good off. So we're going to go integer.parseInt num. And then we want to cast this to, actually, can we do byte parse? Is there a way to parse bytes? We're going to find out. Wow, there is. I guess it should make sense because there's a parse for literally every variable you can use. But integer parse is one of the few I actually use. Occasionally I use parse double, parse float, but usually I forget they exist simply because I never use them. But this should work. For some reason it thinks this is always going to be, oh. Oh, wait, what? Maybe? Yes? Okay, data is never used. Okay, that's what's wrong. So I'm gonna go if buffer. Actually, wait. We don't want a buffer. We want prop value. That would have been a horrible mistake. And then we don't want to do this. We want to do num dots. So we're going to go if prop dot contains base width is what this is called. Then we want to store the width value. We don't need this actually. That's no longer used. We just need to do. I guess we'll debug width as a second variable. So we want to do data dot width equals integer dot parse. Parse int, and we just want to pass in a value. Yeah, here we go. By the way, since I actually can now put this in here because I don't need final, we can go back to putting all of our try catches back in here. So I want to do this, and then I want to do this real quick, and then we want to put a try catch just around this part by itself. So we would do exception E, or its IO exception is actually this X put. Then we do E dot print stack trace, although we don't really care if it does. We then want to come down here and I don't want to say that's our only thing we can output. We do want to put this up here. Actually, since we're doing this, we might as well store the texture file. And at the bottom here, actually we do put line plus plus. So we want to, if we're throwing an exception, we want to do new runtime exception, failed reading line, and then plus line, and then E. And we actually want to change this from IO exception to any exception. So any exception gets thrown. It doesn't matter what it is, null point, number format exception, etc., etc. We want to make sure that it tells us what line has failed. And then after a while, we'll come back through here and we'll put much nicer debug information in here. One of the things when you go to do this, and if you expect at any given point that the user is going to be involved in the process, you want to put as much error debug as possible. You want to tell the user exactly what is wrong, and because I do expect somebody to come through and change the font at some point in time, I will eventually come back through here and really put some nice debug in here. Not only does it help the user, it does also help me as a developer, not just helping the user, but helping myself. So if I make a mistake and somewhere in here it will tell me, if the user makes a mistake, I can tell the user they made a mistake. If the user makes a mistake, they can see for themselves that they made a mistake. I don't have to then tell them what they're doing. Although I guarantee I will have a GitHub issue repository that'll be full of people going, how do fix error? Literally exactly sounding like that. And you may laugh saying like you're never going to run into a situation where a user's that dumb. You will run into users that are that dumb. You also run into users that will sound like that simply because English is not their native language. They'll go, how do blue collar, or how do color blue when they meant blue collar, or whatever. I'll make a video on another topic of difficulties with user support because of language barriers and stuff. The important thing is we want to get this done, and I want to get this done before I'm told I need to not be making noise. So recording at this point in time is actually pretty risky because I might get yelled at. Let's see. Recording value. Okay, we got the base width. So we have an X offset, Y offset, and then width offset. So we just need to basically do this real quick. And the reason why I'm keeping all this information, even though I don't need it, is because the same ideal that you detect user errors and stuff. Say if somebody changes this and there actually is a width offset thing. Even though I don't personally use it, somebody may decide that, hey, they want to use it. or they want to use whatever this information is. I can't think of a case where this information actually is used, because I don't even know if the software that I'm using actually outputs this information. Because right now it's defaulted all to 0, so the assumption is it's not used. Okay, so we want to just sit here and assign values. So we wanted to make a variable called width offset. We want to make a variable called x offset. We want to make a variable called y offset. And then we just want to sit here and create these variables. Create field. And we just want to say copy this, and copy, and it'll be with x offset and with y offset. And that data is stored. I'm not going to implement it probably until somebody tells me to implement it, because all honestly, I don't know what this data does. I don't know if we're offsetting position, we're offsetting our read value. There's nothing in the file that indicates to tell me what it's doing, so there's no point in assuming and then coming back and going, well, I wasn't supposed to do that. We'll find very often that that actually does happen. So we're going to go ahead and just implement this. Because even though I said I probably wasn't going to implement this right away, I'm here, I'm doing the work, I might as well finish the last value off. There is more data in the file. There is italic, bold, anti-aliasing, and I don't know what any of that stuff does. So we're going to leave it alone because there's no point in loading that in if I definitely don't need it. Or I know for sure that the user's not going to need it, because what does a bold 400 mean? There is no context tied to this, there's no context tied to this, and as far as I know, my text does not know how to bold and does not know how to italic and does not, I definitely don't have any anti-aliasing built into my game whatsoever, so there's no point even loading it if it can't support it. So we want to do, we're missing things. Oh yeah, we're missing font. So global width offset equals integer dot parsent. And we're actually committing a coding sin here by not testing our code while we're working on it. We've implemented a lot of code here, and we have not once hit the run button. It's important to know that when you write code, you should always test it as often as possible. And this needs to be y, this needs to be x. Global x offset. And this needs to be global. Actually, this one needs to be x, this one needs to be y. The brain cells are not here today. I mean that kind of jokingly, because the brain cells, of course, actually are there, but it's more of an inside joke that I've developed over a while. That's when my brain isn't functioning, I'll go, well, the brain cells are not in the house, or I'm just gonna type. Let's see. And now, one thing I can also say, what we can do instead of being going prop starts with and then prop contains, I can just go prop equals. But I decided that this is a good way, because then we can add more properties to the file if we want to, and we can toy around with it. And it's not the most efficient setup, but then you should only load font once. Okay. So we got prop dot width is the last one. Width 0 is default. Okay, that's luckily we're actually doing the contains check, because there's a little comment in the document that would have normally messed up things. Font name equals value. Font height is actually going to be important, because when I develop the UVs, I can actually detect for height and stuff, and trim my textures down. I'll work on that, because the alternative, if I don't trim the textures down, I gotta cross my fingers and hope overlapping doesn't break things. We'll fix things here in a second. So we get font height. This is just integer parsent value. And then font default width equals integer dot parseInt value. Okay, that all looks good. That should all read in, and if we run things, hopefully this won't critically fail, and it critically failed because we no longer need the texture path. Okay, so run. I'm amazed. All of that just loaded in and worked. So next step is we now just need to do that. And the next part of doing the font, since we just loaded this file in, would actually be to calculate this. I'm not going to do this in this video because I want to really quickly just work on button actions and then close the video out. So we're going to close font render. I'll do that video here later. It won't take long. It really would be simple. But I do want to get GUIs done today. So we're going to just... I was actually hoping to avoid doing it this way, but the easiest way I can think of it is public void on click and then boolean left. And then we, of course, want to pass in the game display, and then we want to pass in our mouse X and Y. Okay, so that'll work because then we have an on-click action. And then what we want to do is come down to our game display, and we already have the code. We do need to do one thing real quick. I need to find where the update code is. So boolean using GUI equals false, and then we want to go if using GUI. Using GUI equals true. So the update method returns if the mouse is currently over a GUI component. And the way we want to simply go is like, yeah, we need to use the GUI. So somewhere up here in our normal place where we keep pretty much everything, is GUI in use? And we just want to set that to false. And actually what we're going to do is, what did I do? I did something magical there, and I kind of know what I just kind of did, but I don't remember what key it is to hit. There actually is a specific thing. I think it's a Control-Shift, click. Ah, that's what I just did. That right there. It's Alt-Shift and then click. That lets you edit multiple lines at once if you want to do some cool magic. Very little use cases you need to do it, but I used that a while back to initialize a ton of fills all at the same time. Personally, I just like to do stuff like this where I'll grab this, hit copy, and then just like spam that. That's my preferred way of doing it. Where were we at? We're actually gonna do this. Is GUI. There we go. That'll work. So then we'll initialize it to false, and we're going to put this underneath this tag right here. So initialize it to false, and then we'll set it to true again if the GUI is in use. And if the GUI is in use, we come down here and we go, if GUI is GUI in use, then we just translate all of our left and right clicks over to the GUI. Shoot. I have a better idea how to do this, I think. Yeah, we're going to do it this way. Because then we return null, and then we return... Yeah, we return the selected component. That'll make my life a little easier because then I can pass the clicks directly to it. And then we want to go up to here, we want to delete this. And then we want to come down here, we want to go protected component current GUI component in use. Yeah, that kind of clarify. We're actually going to do it this way, just to clarify even further, in case I decide to come back to, or I decide to not work on this for a month and then come back, I'll forget what everything is. That's the reason my job docs exist more or less. Current GUI part that the mouse is over and the player or the user is manipulating. And this means manipulating as in like manipulating control to turn like something on and off, or manipulating switch, not manipulating as in doing something evil, which is what most people think manipulating means. In the exact context, that person was manipulative. Okay, so we got this, and we're just going to literally come back down here, and we're going to set it to null, and then we're going to go component, put that there, and we're going to go component doesn't equal null, and then we're going to do it this way. How the system will be designed is the last GUI to update is the one that gets the component. So if you have multiple GUIs with overlapping components, which you should not have, then the last one gets the thing. Yeah, that works. Because then we do something like, we do this actually public, boolean is active equals true. Mouse in window and is visible and is active. There's a distinction between these two, so can the user see the GUI / should it render? Can the user use the GUI? So if we set is active to false, then you can see the render of the GUI. It might be grayed out or something depending on how you want to do the render code, but you can't manipulate it. So that means then you don't want to set some mouse over thing, which by the way, we're going to get rid of this. So there's no mouse over, there's no select. So you can't select something if the GUI doesn't work. Now, if we're not visible, we definitely don't want to select anything because all the GUIs exist on the screen at any given time, just they may not render. I don't know if we actually even want to update it if it's not active. We'll come back to this logic later. And we're going to, since we're here, we're going to just map this real quick. List of components contained in the GUI. Okay. So we've got that, we've checking that, and then we want to come down here and we want to go if component in use, our current component in use doesn't equal null, then we want to go current GUI component in use dot on click, and we go this, and we currently aren't passing in the mouse position at all. So we want to fix that. So we want to do this. So we want to put it here. This is just the easiest way. Because one, we're tracking the X and Y position according to the map, then the floor according to the map. Then we still want the mouse position. This actually would be important later because you could have render effects you want to be precisely where people click, not relative where they think they clicked. It'll make the render code look so much nicer. Although we'll have to test it because I could be wrong on that one, but we'll come to that road here later. Okay, cool. That's the right code. We just copy and append that right there, and then we run true on this one. And this should work. We can then left and right click. So I'm going to go on right click, and then we want to go system.out.println click, and then we want to do plus left. And then we'll do actions here later because, to be honest, none of these components have any logic built into them. But if I go like this, I click that component's been clicked, and to be honest, we also need to do something like this. So we know what component we just clicked. And we'll actually just leave this debug in here because by default we just want to track where stuff's clicked. But we necessarily don't, or we want to track if you've clicked something even though it doesn't have an action on it. So we click like this, there's that. See, it's telling us exactly what. So that's button 0, button 1, button 2, button 3. There's a button there, and this is all clickable. So we're good. And of course our text is still rendering, our FPS is rendering, our GUI is resizable. Everything's good, so I'm going to close out this video, and I'm going to continue doing work because I still have a little bit of energy left, but mentally I don't have enough to do recordings. So I'll see you guys later, get you more videos. I might be doing more Minecraft stuff this week, and definitely going to be doing more game stuff, but that's it.